All right. I am here with Julie Keys. She is a certified exit planner. How's it going, Julie?
Doing really well. Thanks, Dave, for having me on the show.
Yeah. I'm excited to get into some tactical aspects of exiting. But before we get there, let's talk about your background. What got you into the space?
Yeah, entrepreneur my whole adult life. Went through my own exit about 18 years ago, and it wasn't the best experience. I look back on it now and realize I didn't have the right advisors in place, and I didn't know what I didn't know. But I wanted to take what I learned as an entrepreneur and running, people and locations and growth strategy and all that, and bring it to other business owners and help them have better outcomes. So I started consulting, joined a business coaching franchise on the East Coast, and was running that business for a few years, and then heard about the Exit Planning Institute and became a certified exit planner at that point. So I run alongside those two, kind of lines of expertise. So business consulting aligns well with exit planning because there's so much that has to happen within the business readiness aspect of transition. And so that's how I got to where I am now. And that was as an exit planner 10 years. And now faculty for EPI and national speaker and instructor, in addition to working with a lot of clients.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about preparedness because you sit in a unique seat where you see a lot of deals, you see a lot of different companies, all different industries. Let's talk about how people listening can go about preparing your business.
Yeah, there's a lot to preparation. And if you're a private company and you've owned your business for a long time, chances are good that you have some catch up work to do. I have seen it happen probably 90% of the time in every client that I've ever worked with, that they have catch up work to do. And what that looks like is if we look at exit planning from like how do you dissect it, right? Like what's the actual process? I look at it from an owner readiness and a business readiness perspective. So the owner readiness side, and both have to do with de-risking, right? So as if we can eliminate risk first, then we can dive in and see what else we can do to increase the outcome, probabilities. But on the owner readiness side, that looks like updating your estate plan, updating any legal documents that you might have or should have that would either protect you or would protect the business, which would thereby protect you because usually we're personally guaranteeing things. And then tax planning, and of course, the one that many owners elude, and that's financial planning. And so many times they think that all my money is in my business. I don't have money for the capital markets right now, but I will when I sell. So therefore, I don't really need anybody until after I sell. And my answer to that is emphatically no. It is a complete opposite of that. You absolutely need to have a really good financial advisor on your team helping you with planning, even if you're not investing, right? Because you got to know where you're going. And then that advisor can help you de-risk yourself financially and, put you in touch with a good tax planner and so on. So that's owner readiness. And another aspect of owner readiness, what we'll probably talk about later, has to do with next act planning, but that's part of owner readiness. And then business readiness, of course, is the transferability of the company. How dependent is it on the owner? And what do we have to do to try to decentralize the owner from the business? Usually, even in larger companies, there are many times when the owner is the face of the business out there in the public, or with primary customers or clients, or maybe they're the go-to for everybody in the company. No one can make a move without their blessing. And all of that takes away the value of the company. So the more an owner can decentralize themselves, the more transferable the business is. And sometimes that has to do with having the right people in the right seats, but that's all about transferability and making sure we have good leadership. Cash, of course, is really important. But yeah, so owner readiness, business readiness, there's a lot more to say about both of those, but that in a nutshell, that's preparedness.
Nice. I like that you split it into two categories because often the owner readiness falls between the cracks because everything is focusing on the business.
Yeah.
And in my experience talking to people, that's the majority of time. People on the other side of the deal all of a sudden say like, wait a second, my lifestyle was this every year and now I'm only good for like 3 years. What happened? And it's a real problem that a lot of people focus
Yeah.
on, but it's an understandable one, right? Because there's so many moving parts. There's so many different, things that you have to manage going throughout this process. So when it comes to timing, I'm curious to get your take on this. Every industry, business is different, but in your experience, when's the right time to sell?
Yeah, there's a lot to determining the timing of that. And I think there are several factors that need to be considered when it comes to timing. Of course, just the timing of the business and is it actually ready, right? So, regardless of whether we're in the throes of exit now or 20 years from now, we should always have an exit ready business. Always. Why? Because opportunity knocks, and sometimes it only knocks once. And if we're not ready and our business is not deemed sellable, we just lost an opportunity. Conversely, if something happens, and it does, and I've had many clients who have had things happen that were triggering events to be forced to sell because someone died or got divorced or partners hated each other and needed to separate, things like that, or they get sick, disabled. We call those the 5Ds in exit planning: death, divorce, disagreement, disability, and distress. So to just safeguard against that, right? So some contingency planning on one side, and being ready for any opportunity on another side would be that. And then as far as like marketability, that is also going to depend on what's going on in the world, like what's going on with the economy, what's going on with your industry. Say, for instance, you're an electrical services firm right now, your phone is probably ringing off the hook. Why? Because electrical companies and those who provide commercial services especially, and low voltage, are sought after heavily by all different kinds of buyers. And so and then, on the flip side of that, if you're a marketing firm, you're probably not so sought after because AI is taking away a lot of that work, right? And so maybe it's not a good time for you to hang on for the rest of your life with that unless you are converting to using that technology and making your business more valuable that way. But that's what I'm seeing as far as like marketability and market readiness. And of course, if you're selling internally versus externally, and you're selling to a management team or you're selling to family members, the timing of, borrowing money, right? What are the interest rates? Like they say, when the interest rates improve, then that improves the M&A market, both internally and externally, because it makes money cheaper to borrow. And most M&A transactions, especially if they're going to a third party, are going to go with financing of some kind. And when rates are high, there's less activity. Same with if I'm a family member and I want to buy my parents' business and I know I need to borrow money to do it because I don't have the money to buy it from them. Maybe they're going to carry a note for me, and I'm going to, use some money from my life insurance as the down payment or whatever, right? I figure that out. But the rest of it's going to be made up by a loan. And if I can't qualify for the loan, plus I'm paying my parents back and the business can't sustain, that kind of outflow from cash, then I'm probably not going to get the loan. So those are all the things, right? And let's not forget the timing of like me as an owner to be psychologically ready. So I can have all of these other readiness factors out there that say, yep, lights are on green, Julie, go for it. But yet I'm just like, ugh, I don't know if I can let go. That's a real
Yeah.
thing too. Yeah.
I'd love to double click on transferability. That's like the one of the most important words I think in the whole industry that is M&A, because especially in this day and age with social media, a lot of people's faces are driving top
Mhm.
line, and I think that there's such a kind of dynamic way of approaching it. So in your experience, let's dig into that a little bit. What have you seen work really well for people to make their business that they're working on today? Let's say their financials are in line, but what are some things that you've seen work with making it transferable?
Well, if the transferability has to do with the owner being the center point of the business, then the owner needs to practice delegating because that's a huge risk. So when we talk about trying to de-risk a business, usually that's one of the primary detractors of value, and one of the biggest risk factors is that the owner is the business or the founders are the business. And that's very prevalent in smaller companies because they wear a lot of the hats, which understandable, right? It's tough to get away from that. But whatever the least things are, like the lowest hanging fruit that you as a business owner can do to remove yourself from day to day, do it, whatever it is. And you could start with the mundane. You could start with the repeatable, because those are things that you could easily delegate to anybody. And if you don't have anybody on your team to delegate them to, then hire a VA, right? Hire a virtual assistant, or get the technology needed in order to automate yourself so that you don't have to do those mundane, repeatable tasks that generate no revenue and do nothing to grow the business. And then if you find yourself signing all the checks, making all the decisions, and the customers and clients always call you, especially when there's a problem, then that's a problem. So that makes the business basically untransferable too, which means if you go away, the business goes away. So you as the owner need to step back and ask yourself, if I took 2 weeks off, what would happen to my business? Am I free to do that? And if you're not, let's work towards it. Heck, if you can't even take a week off, you got a lot of work to do there. So start with a step, like I need to be gone for a week, no phone calls, no meetings for a whole week. What would it take for me to get there? Start with that, and then practice by increasing. So a lot of the clients I've worked with over the years, I should say, we sometimes will set a goal depending on how the business is in terms of dependency on the owner, but we'll set a goal for gone for a month. And gone for a month usually takes a couple years, sometimes longer. But that's a long-term goal that we set so that my owners can transition out when the time is right. And so we practice it, right? Because so many times owners think that exit has to be all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be. In fact, many times it can't be all or nothing. So for those who are worried of letting go and having nothing to do, that's another part of the whole, planning process. Like, where do I see myself? What do I want to be doing? What do I love to do? Do I want to just take some chips off the table? Do I want to stay engaged for a while? Do I want to be on the board? Do I want to sell? What do I like to do that's fun, where I can remove some liability? And that takes time. So we don't want to wait to start the process. Got to really be thinking about it.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic segue when you're talking about deal structures and everything into negotiations. So how do you approach valuation? How do you approach kind of obviously transferability is a huge one, but what are some things that you could share around your best foot forward when you're going into a negotiation about the valuation of the business and going through the process?
Yeah, so that hopefully the time that you find out what your business is worth is not at the moment that you receive an offer, okay? If you don't know what your business is worth, find out. And that does not mean that you need to get a full-blown valuation, but you have got to know where you are today so that you know if you have a value gap. Because generally most business owners discover that if they have a value gap, meaning what it's worth today isn't what it should be worth in order for me to be able to sell and maintain my lifestyle. There's a gap in value, which generally means that there's also a gap in wealth because my nest egg is my business. And if that's the case, what do we got to do to close the gap? Well, we don't even know if we have a gap if we don't know where we are today. So determine what the business is worth through a calculation of value with a reputable accounting firm who can actually perform that duty for you. And if your accounting firm is not capable of giving you a baseline valuation or a calculation of value, then find a firm who can. You do not need a full-blown valuation unless you have a deal on the table or you're buying out a partner, whatever your buy-sell agreement says or your operating agreement. But if you're not in that situation, you just need to know where you stand today, then spend a few $1,000, go get a valuation so you actually know where you're at. And then, right, you'll know like what my steps are for structure and negotiation, because the phone could be ringing. And I'm going to just tell you a story really quick because I just had this conversation with a woman who owns a low voltage organization in 4 states. So she's done really well. She's in business with 2 of her brothers. They bought out a 3rd brother, and the phone's been ringing. And honestly, I think that a lot of it has to do with these PE companies who are interested, or competitors who are interested in buying low voltage companies so they can build more data centers, because data centers are needed in order to expand AI, as we all know. And we're short on data centers, and we're short on electricians, right? We're short on the trades in that category. And but they don't know what their business is worth. I'm like, we'll just call her Sue. I said, Sue, how can you possibly know if someone's handing you the deal of a lifetime, which you should be getting based on your line of work and where you operate, if you don't even know what your business is worth? How do you know if it's a good number? She said, I really don't. And I said, well, if you don't have a deal maker involved in helping you negotiate, who's going to negotiate? And she said, well, I don't know. I said, do you think it should be you? And she said, no. And I said, good call. It should not be you. It should never be you. I said, it's okay to have a preliminary conversation if a competitor calls, but you never want to give them any kind of proprietary information or any details. And you certainly don't want to be giving them any kind of impression that you're desperate or that you have to sell, right? We really want to remove ourselves from that because it's an emotional place. And so we want to have someone else on the outside who's an expert at it, who does it all the time. Like, this is something we never do, right? Most business owners are doing this once, and they've spent their whole life building something where they have one shot at doing it right, because it's probably the biggest financial transaction of their life, right? And so why would we ever want to take the chance of DIYing that? We just won't, right? It's not a good idea. And so I said, okay, if you're not going to have a deal maker help you try to find other buyers who could, create an auction experience for you, then you at least have to have a really good M&A attorney. The M&A attorney is going to help you negotiate and help you figure out deal structure, right? Because so many times the owners are just like glued to whatever that top line number is. But it isn't the top line, right, Steve? It's what we get to keep and everything in between the top line and the bottom line. And the attorney who has your back, or the deal maker who you really need, is the one who's going to negotiate that for you and have your back so that you can be about the business of keeping your business going. When a lot of owners try to do this on their own, they take the foot off the gas of the business because they're busy doing these things where they're trying to negotiate by themselves, right, to save money, and end up depleting the value of the business because they can't do it all at once. So don't do that.
Yep.
That's probably a really long answer to your question, but I see it all the time.
It was great. I couldn't agree more that just even removing emotion from the deal by hiring an advisor to help is such an underrated cost or expense to the owner, because you've been building something with your blood, sweat, and tears for a decade in most cases, and it has emotion attached to it. It's charged for sure. So that kind of takes us to the finale question of knowing what you know now. What would you tell Julie 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago was when I first started building the exit planning practice alongside my business consulting. And if I would have known 10 years ago that it would have been built primarily through a solid network, then I would have spent my marketing dollars on that. But I didn't. I thought that I had to have a healthy mix and, spend money on marketing, which I have a marketing degree. And so I believe in the power of marketing. But there are certain types of marketing that work for certain industries and certain types that work for others. So does that mean I wouldn't have spent any money on it? No. It would have meant that I would have directed those dollars towards actual efforts that worked. So when you're in the relationship business, trying to get clicks and people to be interested out there, in cyberspace, interested in working with you with their most important asset is next to impossible. And, I just believed that the people that were trying to sell me what I shouldn't have bought, right? And so if I were going to do it again, I would have just spent all my time and all my effort on anything that had to do with being in front of either advisors or business owners to help grow those relationships, grow trust, build rapport, provide value through teaching, through speaking, a lot of the things I've done maybe over the last 6 or 7 years. So I'd say that I spun my wheels for the first 2 or 3 years, and that would have been 10 years ago. Yeah, so I guess I didn't really waste that much time, but I still feel like I did. Like I could have made a bigger impact if I would have known that ahead of time. So now I teach a lot of advisors what I learned so they don't have to go through that, like shorten the learning curve,
Very nice. Well said.
Hopefully it works.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So, where can people learn more about what you're doing, and where can they hear about your podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast show launched in June of 2020, right about the time yours did, Steve, maybe a little bit after you. We're a weekly show, and I wrote a book called Poised for Exit. And the Poised for Exit podcast is out there, just like yours, on Spotify and iHeart and all the things, Apple. And so it's business owners and advisors just talking about exit planning. Similar to your show, and I think that it's good, right? It's good for advisors and business owners to have these resources, your resources, my resources, so that they can learn and have better outcomes. And so that would be how I would encourage people to find me, or you could find me on LinkedIn. I have a website too, but I'll just send you to LinkedIn because then you can find me everywhere. And so you'll find Julie Keyes on LinkedIn, Keyes, and that'd be the best place to reach out to me, connect with me, send me a note, and we can meet up if it makes sense.
Amazing, amazing. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Julie mentioned will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it. It was fun.